K2 is as beautiful as ever and as tantalising as ever and as untouchable as ever. At the moment it's truly impossible. There's so much snow, it's just it's just not even worth starting on it. The route itself, I've got mixed feelings about. At this point, I'd like to have a serious go at it. Up to Camp 1 is a doddle. It's really just a walk. It's not terribly steep, it's not terribly high, and anyone can really go there. It's more an advanced base camp. From there to Camp 2 is extremely steep. It goes up to a col. And then above that, there's quite a difficult rock wall section which leads to a snow plateau, which is quite long. And above that, nobody at this point knows.
I'm Kurt Tullis. She was just my mum, and she was there when I needed her, and she wasn't when I wasn't. I was a fairly independent person from when I left school. I was pretty independent. I mean, I've grown up around climbers my whole life, and people are always getting killed on climbing and mountaineering. I always knew that one day she probably wouldn't come back.
My name's Lindsay and I'm the daughter of Julie. I think I miss her more now. I think when you're that age, you're so wrapped up in your own life and what you're doing and, obviously romance and all the other things that go on when you're sort of 16, 17, 18. I mean, I've got loads of fond memories of my mum, but this time of year is quite a hard time of year because obviously the bluebells are out, and as children we always used to go and pick bluebells, always.
As spring comes, so the flowers creep higher and higher up the mountain, and every time I walk up there are new and different flowers. Today I found an edelweiss, and I've now seen several more. But again, I just have to have my camera with me all the time. Sometimes the flowers are peeping out of the snow, sometimes they're in the sunshine. The marmot is always there to greet me as I go by, and it's right to the edge of the glacier, so one step more and you're onto the ice.
My name's Terry Tullis. I was married to Julie Tullis. She was a remarkable woman, and I never ever would have believed it. When I first met her, even we'd been married a long time, and she would look after the house, and she was happy at home. But I was the climber, although she did climbed very well, in fact. But then she was pretty run down, and a friend of ours offered to take her to the mountains. And I think that was the start of her love of mountains.
Hello, darling. This is a tape to wish you a very, very happy birthday. I'm sorry it'll arrive a little bit late, but life here is a little bit restricted at the moment because for the last week the weather's been absolutely atrocious. Every day it's snowed hard and there have been very strong winds and it's been impossible to go anywhere on the mountains beyond Camp 1. The morale generally in our camp is pretty good. One person's cracked up a bit and has decided to go home, but the rest have...
Well, darling, I've tried to start recording this tape about 16 times and I keep getting interruptions. It's quite fair outside. It's not bad, it hasn't been bad. Trying to think what I've done. It seems such a jumble of time without you that I've really forgotten.
It's a really international society on the moraine here, and it's really nice for me because sorry, so many of our old friends are living along the moraine with us. I've got this crazy cough and I just can't seem to can't seem to lose it. It's not a chest cough, so I'm not so worried about it. I've tried each of the doctors at the various base camps in turn, and none of them seem able to give me anything to cure it. But equally, none of them has actually...
I hope all is going well for you. I hope Kurt's here and taken a lot of the hassle off your shoulders. Because I really thought you were incredibly brave. Still, you're that sort of lady. I do miss you, Toad. But it's like writing letters. I get terribly tied up for words.
At 4 o'clock when we woke up, it was sunny, the skies were blue, and all looked well for a good day's mountaineering. 6 o'clock, and we're nearing the start of the climb, and it's snowing harder. We're surrounded by mist again, and the whole thing looks a little crazy. It's always a strange feeling as you approach the mountain you're going to climb. And in this very still, misty air, it has even a more uncanny feeling than normal. Not a feeling of foreboding, more a feeling of mystery.
Da ist Budokan, Palau.
Ja, hier ist Kurt Ober.
Sally Kurt, wie habt ihr den Nachmittag überstanden?
My name is Kurt Diemberger. Oh ja, ganz ordentlich. Das Wetter sieht etwas besser aus. Aber ich möchte von dir... Julie and I were the highest film team in the world. She taking the sound and I doing the pictures, and both of us having our ideas for the film together.
Immer noch gleich, also gleich schlecht.
Mhm.
Und hat sich nicht...
Once a mountaineer is caught by the spell of the mountains. And it were not just the mountains then. It was K2. And she does say that. K2, K2. It accompanies me like a repetitive marching song. And I'm trying to push away this thought, yeah, by thinking of my family. And people may think I must be mad, yeah, to love a mountain. Yeah. But K2 is a very special mountain.
She always made an effort to send, I think on my 18th, she was away for my 18th, and she made me a card on a piece of folded paper. I can't even remember what the paper was, but she pressed a load of flowers into an 18 and just sent that through with a little note. And I mean, so she always remembered, even though she wasn't there.
She actually didn't write to me a huge amount, but I did get a postcard from her at the end of the 86 season saying too many people have been killed. I'm coming home, I've had enough, which I received, I can't remember exactly, but probably about a week before I heard that she'd been killed. So I was expecting her to come home, and that was it, that trip was over.
Chris will accept it, and I think Chris has to accept it because he's still in the climbing world, while Lindsay's on the outside of the climbing world. I think she's kept it inside, which is not really good. She was 2 years younger.
I think even with Dad finds it, I think I remind him too much of Mum. I think that's, difficult for him. I think we're quite similar. That's probably just because we've got the same hair, similar hair, and obviously now we're coming up to a similar age because she was 45 and I'm 41. So that's quite an eye-opener. I feel like I should be going and doing something worthwhile now. Go and climb a few mountains.
Mehr als ein Kartuschen am Tag verbrauchst du.
Ja, wenn wir klar sind.
And we take food, and that's it. We go. Very
Und dann,
light.
wenn es eben nichts ist, ja, dann lassen wir das Zelt oben.
It was quite exciting to leave Camp 2 finally and set off for Camp 3. Camp 2 had been such a long blocking section. And hopefully at last this was going to be the breakthrough. God, what hard work. Because we know we were totally without any altitude porters. We carried very heavy packs ourselves.
It's not like you've got a map and it says, go down that street, turn right, and, past that clock tower. Until you're reaching the next part of the mountain, you don't know what you've got coming. You don't know what the weather's going to do. You don't know anything. So it's very much the unknown. And I suspect if you, like I say, you must have to have that determination to just carry on, which was typical mother,
And the section to Camp 3 is the most difficult of the whole climb. Much, much rock to be negotiated, and even with fixed ropes, very strenuous moves, strong pull-ups over blocks, awkward little chimney moves. Very, very difficult section indeed. On and on and on we went.
First of all, I had the feeling to go back to all those places where I had been with Julie. So many places. Back to Nanga Parbat, back to Everest, back to the Shaksgam on the China side of K2 and Broad Peak, and back to K2, of course. So I also wanted to fulfill all our promises, ideas or plans that we had in mind. Julie wanted to climb Everest. So I didn't really need to climb Everest anymore, but I would have gone for Julie, I would have gone up Everest again. Yeah? And of course we would have liked to climb Nanga Parbat, but it wasn't to be.
Got a message from Kurt to say that a tape had been found on a glacier on Nanga Parbat by a porter, I think, listened to, and he decided it was Julie's tape. So he gave it to a Japanese climber. The Japanese climber took it home and found out about Julie and about Kurt, sent it to Kurt, and Kurt sent it to me. So it had gone all this way round back to me 20 years later. I think it was the amazement more than hearing her voice again. It was still pristine. First trip to the big mountains.
Bad weather again. Really is desperate. But the climbers decided to stay on the mountain. I reorganised our tent, and we had a very nice day in base camp. At 9:30 that evening, Michelle came with a mail, and there was a letter from Terry, which, fantastic. Can't understand. I held it in my hand. I got it in the kitchen by the firelight, and took it away, a bit like a squirrel with its nuts, and sat and held it for a long time before I opened it, really savoured it, a bit like a child with sweets.
Hello, darling. You've been away now 25 days. Weather outside is lousy. We're going to have a little shindig in the garden tonight. Lindsay was out last night and went to a couple of clubs. I went off to this party last night. Everybody's asking after you, really wanting to know what you're getting up to. I can't tell them anything. I'm very much in the dark. But anyway, I left there about 12 and came home. It wasn't that swingy, and all these bloody chinless ones from college were getting right up my nose. So I thought it was time to leave. Look after yourself. I love you, Toad.
So once again, it's just Kurt and I who are left on the mountain. Everyone else has evacuated because of bad weather and gone down. We're quite used to the feeling now of being alone up here. On K2 we've done it 3 times, and now on Broad Peak. It's a nice place to be, and we don't mind being here on our own at all. We've got quite a lot of filming we want to do. I would rather be here amongst the mountains than down in this so much more civilized situation of base camp. We've decided to stay here and just take potluck and see what the weather does. Could be quite dangerous if too much snow falls and we're into an avalanche situation. But inshallah, if the weather's fine tomorrow, maybe we can go up.
She met Kurt at the right time. He encouraged her. She was able to be encouraged. Whereas, if she'd have met Kurt earlier while we were still young, maybe she wouldn't have had the time and wouldn't have been able to go.
We did not meet in the mountains. We met at the sea. It was Holyhead, the climbing route, just above the sea, and from below the waves hit the walls, just below you. Yeah? So this route is called Dream of White Horses. I saw her climbing it, and we already felt in some way familiar, I think. We felt in some way familiar.
Julie and I could never climb together. It just didn't work. We were both scared if something happened to both of us. There were 2 children at home. So we just never did. We had our own climbing partners. And that was it, really. And then she met Kurt, or I met Kurt. It wasn't attraction. It was definitely affinity. They could talk about things together, and they'd go off on long talks about all sorts of weird things, nothing to do with climbing, just discuss things. They were very, very close. Soulmates, really.
Julie? Yeah. I'm fine. Broad Peak certainly seems a more friendly mountain than K2. And we came up in sunshine and then snow, but it still wasn't anything like as serious as K2. And we came up the gully that Kurt came up in 1957.
The higher you get, especially when you get to the so-called death zone, between, say, 7,500 or maybe 8,000 meters and higher. And you should not stay too long in the death zone. From person to person it varies. Some can survive 3 days, others can survive a week.
The top of Broad Peak is very different. It's a series of mini mountains, and you go up and down and up and down. And every time I thought the next peak was the summit, I'm afraid it wasn't. And finally, I saw the summit itself way in the distance.
When we reached the summit, it was incredible. There, it was such a strange, like a hypnosis of ice crystals coming down from the clouds, a rain of ice crystals with sunshine, mixed with sunshine. It was like a fairy tale.
And eventually there we were on the summit. A beautiful evening, particularly on the China side. But of course we couldn't stay very long.
It's like just walking above the clouds. You won't believe it if somebody tells you, but we were in the midst of this, and so it was absolutely fantastic, really undescribable. And in this atmosphere we got to the top of Julie's first 8,000 meter peak, and I remember she had tears in her eyes. She was so moved from reaching this place, and we were happy beyond measure.
Towards the end, when she was getting more and more into mountains, she was away for a long time. One year she was away for 9 months. They always found something else to do. But of course, Julie was getting quite well known by then, and the press were always on the phone wanting to know where she was, and I never knew. I got pretty jarred off at that point. It was a bit too long to be away.
Oh, hello. It's me again. Having waited 2 hours to get through to you, I get the machine, unfortunately. Not to worry. I just wanted to really fill you in on details of the Broad Peak thing. And I'll ring you tomorrow.
I think it was destiny in the avalanche, that both of us survived. We could have been swept over the edge, being twisted by the force of the avalanche. Many people die in avalanches because of being twisted. Or even they are pressed by the mass of snow, so they cannot breathe anymore.
We slid for quite a while, and at one point the avalanche had covered us, and I hit out my arm very strongly and got air, and we just somersaulted and were so involved in the snow. I can't remember how long we were for, but it was quite a while, and suddenly there I was, lying flat on my back with my head down the mountain, my mouth, eyes, ears, and all my clothing full of snow. But we'd stopped, and I suddenly heard Kurt's voice say, "Julie, are you all right?" And I looked up, and he was about 20 feet above me. And I knew that some miracle had saved us.
She never came home when she said she'd come home. She just had some sort of inquisitive nature that would always leave them to stay on and explore a bit more. And there was always the excuse of, oh, we've got a film to finish and it hasn't got an ending or it hasn't got a start, or we need more footage.
I mean, the last thing I remember is getting a letter from Julie saying that she'd given up. Too many people had died that year and she didn't want to go anymore. And the next thing I knew, the weather had got a little bit better and everybody had gone home and they thought they'd have a last try.
Below K2, below the summit, we had a strange appearance. On the ridge, it was like swirling lights and snow. A spectacle, really, it was. And there we stopped and we checked each other's will to go. And both of us had the will to go. This moment, it was a life or death decision, because such spirit winds can happen before a big storm breaks.
I always just sort of took it as she was going on holiday. I never wanted to acknowledge, I don't think, and therefore didn't acknowledge that she was going away and doing something dangerous.
So we took the risk and we went up there. We could still have turned around at this point, but we didn't.
No, I'm really in denial.
When we finally had made it and stood up there, even if we didn't see very much, we only saw the oxygen cylinders of the Koreans and the Austrian flag there and Alan Raus's flag. Yeah. So we knew that was the summit. We also took pictures of each other, but the camera was lost. Yeah.
Getting down's more important, of course, and it's much harder. You're tired to start with. You're absolutely beaten. You've got to rely on ropes. You've got to abseil. One slip is it, really.
Then came the descent, which was a nightmare by itself. We had the fall. We landed on the Hanging Glacier, which is about 8,300, 8,400 meters. At this moment, we were just happy to have survived the fall. And we found in the slope a place where I could dig a snow hole. But before I got deep enough, there was a layer of ice. So it only was a sort of a niche. So Julie was crouching in there, and I was outside. That was a very cold night. But in the middle of that night, I started to get really worried towards the morning, because some cold wind was starting. So, a bit battered from everything, we arrived down near the camp where the others were, but we couldn't see it because of the cloud. So we yelled. So we arrived there. And I don't know when now, I think sometimes in this night, or was it the next night, the storm started. And then there came these days with no end. And finally this nightmare, when one after the other died.
Well, I came home and we had an answering machine then which had a red flashing light, and it also read out how many messages there were. Well, it was usual for me to get 5 messages every evening or whatever. And I came home this particular day and looked at the dial, it said 25, and I thought, that's it. I knew Julie had died or something terrible had happened, because there wouldn't be that many messages.
It's made less of a shock because you live with the thought that you're going to get that call, or you could get that call at any time. I suspect it was very similar to somebody that's dying of a disease that you know is going to come eventually. She died because, well, a number of complicated reasons, but the weather was probably the main reason that she died. They were trapped up there and they couldn't come down. Had they have been able to come down, it would have been different.
Well, initially we heard that she was missing. I mean, there really wasn't much information, to be honest, and, Dad was obviously quite upset. And then the news came back that Kurt had survived and Mum had died. But then even that was very sort of surreal, because obviously there was never really any sort of ending, because there was no sort of funeral, or because she didn't come home. It was still very easy to pretend that she was still away climbing a mountain, which is, I think, probably how I dealt with it and have dealt with it from then on. So
she's about, 28,000 feet or something, and wrapped up in a tent, possibly in a glacier, I'm not really sure. Well, I think her dreams were always on summits.
It's where she would have wanted to be anyway. She wasn't desperately religious. Whatever anybody thinks about it, she she couldn't have had a better headstone for a start, and she really, to me, went the best way she possibly could have done.
We knew roughly how we felt about things like that, about religion and funerals and that sort of thing. We had a damn good party, though. We had a get-together at High Rocks. It was an extremely emotional gathering. That's all I can say. It was a really, really good do. And I thought it was fitting to have it at High Rocks, which is where we met.
I don't think I've grieved properly for my mum, probably. I think if she had have come back there, had have been a funeral, I think I would have grieved a lot more, or in a different way. The end result is, obviously I miss her, whatever had have happened, but I do think it is harder to make it final in your mind. I think from that point of view, that is hardest for me since having children. There's loads of things, aren't there, but they're not things you think about all the time. Something will happen and you'll think, oh, that reminded me, that gives you a bit of a jolt, and you think, oh yeah, Mum would have enjoyed that, or, whatever.
We saw a butterfly sitting on a flower and doing like this, and then it went off out into the blue. And we were thinking, we were here, and all is going downhill. The waters are going downhill, and the glaciers going downhill, and we ourselves, we are going downhill. So we said, all that ever has gone up must go down again. And there's one exception, and we thought of the butterfly. The one exception is our dreams. They stay up.
So I will finish. And I hope you had a lovely birthday. And while I'm sitting in my tent in the snow, I'll think of you lying in the garden drinking wine. Give the kids my love. I'll try and write to both of them very soon. And just longing to get a letter from you to know how everything is at home and what's happening. All my love. Bye-bye.